to all the people joining us online for this webinar with the Minister for Skills and Apprenticeships, Gillian Keegan. We're very grateful to have you here, Minister, this afternoon. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jonathan Simons. I'm the Director and Head of the Education Practice here at Public First, and it's a real pleasure to be hosting this event in partnership with the TES to talk to the Minister this afternoon. It is perhaps probably the busiest time for the further education and skills sector that it has been for a very, very long time. I've been involved in education and skills policy for more years than I care to remember, and I think it's safe to say that the agenda coming up this autumn has perhaps never been quite so politically, economically and policy-wise as busy as it has been now. And that's the reason why we're so delighted to be hosting the webinar this afternoon. So we've had the PM speech just last week down at Exeter College. We've had the PM speech just this morning, where again he talked quite a lot about skills. We have the response to the Auger review coming up this autumn. We have the FE white paper coming this autumn. We have the CSR for covering at least 1 year's worth of spending and potentially 3 years worth of spending. And all of that will have a very, very strong skills element to it. So it's a fantastic time to be talking to the person who's going to make it all work. The format of how we're going to run this afternoon is that in a minute I'm just going to ask the Minister to make a few opening remarks. Then I will pose some questions and we can have a general discussion. Julia from the TES will then ask a couple of questions as well on behalf of the Fourth Estate. And then most importantly of all, there'll be a chance for you as panelists to answer questions as well. So if you want to put your questions into the Q&A function in the chat box, sorry, not in the chat box, in the Q&A box, and I will then choose the best ones. If you can let us know your name and your organisation as well, so we can frame the question. And we will make sure that we finish promptly to allow people to get away to the various next things. So, Minister, as I said, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Over to you, really.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks very much for that comprehensive run through of all the things that are going to be happening over the next few months. And as you rightly say, I think certainly not in any of our memories anyway, has there been so much focus on skills, on technical education, on further education. And, you know, I think this was a focus before coronavirus. It was a big focus. It was a big part of our commitment to levelling up across the country. But actually, it's become even more vital as a result of coronavirus. So we've been focused on, I mean, for too long, we know this, any of us who've been involved, but or indeed went to an FE college like myself 35 years ago as part of my apprenticeship. You know, for too long there's been a massive focus on the percentage that go to university. When I was younger, it used to be less than 10%. Now it's 50% who go to university, but not enough on, in my case, the 90% that didn't, now the 50% that don't. And you know, we know that, and certainly if you had a background like mine, if you come from you know, that part of the world where you know, you didn't have perhaps as many opportunities as some others, you do understand that there's a lot of wasted talent in this country, and that's young people who for one reason or another don't get you know, don't get the right start in their education life, but then are almost cut off from it afterwards. And then obviously for adults, you know, later on, trying to come back, it's incredibly difficult to figure out and plot a path in terms of making career changes or investing in your career. You know, the best advice I ever had when I was younger came from my dad, and he said, you know, an hour is always an hour. And all you've got to work out is how much you can get paid in that hour and what you need to do to make yourself more valuable. And that equation is an equation that really we need to be there to help everybody once they figure that out, or once they get the focus in that area, that we're there to help them. But it's even more than that now. So that's from the individual viewpoint, and that's about fairness. It's about leveling up. It's about making sure that we have those opportunities for people. Even more than that, in terms of business, at the same time, we've had the shift where business has been saying, actually, what is coming out of the education system isn't what I need. I need a lot more technical skills. I'm working in a global, fast-moving technological race, and in this environment is very fast changing. It's changing business models, it's changing operating models, and it has done over the past decades. And I need people who have the skills that can really add to that environment today. And that's not just a business environment. You know, look at the impact technology's had on health, on social care, on all of the way we deal with everything, education now, the way we've dealt with everything to do with coronavirus. It's had a massive impact on how things operate. And, you know, the skills in some ways have struggled, and the education system struggled to keep up with that. What we've been doing for the past couple of years, and really our flagship skills offer has been our apprenticeship system. And for about the last 4 years, we've completely changed the way we do that by really embedding employer-led standards. And I think that's given the DFE confidence as well, that, you know, it's often this is sort of switched between the Department for Education and BAYS, or some equivalent of BAYS, because actually skills fit in between. It's that link between education and the skills offer to the businesses, the workplace, the organizations, and the economy. And, you know, for too long, we've kind of had that disconnect. So about 4 years ago, the DFE started working with thousands of businesses actually to develop the apprenticeship standard, and obviously very much supported by the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. And that has given us a big change, and we've now got more than 580 standards in a whole host of careers. And, you know, that's gone further than we've ever been before, but now we want to take that even further, because we realize that what we've learned through that is actually what we need to make sure is there in our full FE offer. So that's why T-levels, we were talking about the posters behind me here, we launched T-levels this year, and they are probably the biggest revolution in technical education in this country, actually probably across the world, because we've actually looked at some of the leading edge systems across the world to help us with the design of T-levels, and they're equivalent to 3A levels. They're a technical equivalent, career-led study, something that's cutting edge, based on, you know, the up-to-date information of what employers want. But they're a full-time study. They're almost like the inverse of apprenticeships. So they're the kind of building blocks that are really given the government, the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, the confidence to invest much more in this area, and to know that what we invest in will be what businesses and organizations need, because we've closed that gap. So that gives us very, very solid foundation. So there's a whole host of activity to support that, but mostly it's investment in more full-time training, in more apprenticeships for SMEs. Obviously T-levels is a huge investment, and we've got capital equipment, and then we've got the actual building estate itself, and teaching and investment in upskilling the workforce as well. So there's a lot of things that are all part of our sort of future vision. And, you know, for me, this just seems completely natural. Having started my career age 16 as an apprentice in a car factory, and then having worked for close to 30 years in businesses, mostly multinational businesses in many different sectors all over the world, this chimes 100% with my experience. The apprenticeship I did was, I think, the best route into a career ever. I think it was really a fantastic way. You went around every bit of the car factory. You really understood how the business worked. You really understood what things you were good at, and where, you know, all the different careers on offer and where you could possibly fit. You were studying at the same time, and you were applying that study straight away in the workplace. It really is a very effective way to learn in a fast moving environment. I think apprenticeships are the best kept secret in this country, and we're determined now to make sure they're available much more widely, all the way through to the levels. They're available all the way through to master's levels, and in a wide range of different professions, and you know, not just the traditional trades, which are of course very important, but there's so much more to apprenticeships. And we'll have the full-time study offer for T-levels, so people can get started on their career journey earlier, and be learning things that are really valuable sooner in the education process. So I'm very excited. I'm truly passionate about this area. I think the customer for this is the learners, those people who need those opportunities to get ahead and get the right skills, get a good job, and the businesses and ultimately our economy who need this supply of skills. We have massive skills shortages in this country, and they have been laid even more bare by coronavirus. And we're going to be left in this position where we'll see people being made redundant in some sectors, and we'll try as quickly as we possibly can to encourage as many as possible to go into those growth areas where we've got massive skills shortages. So that's the key part of our strategy. It was there before coronavirus, and it's even more important now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. And I was reflecting that I think the first time I saw you speak was actually before you'd taken up this ministerial portfolio. It was a reception at, in fact, that Conservative Party conference, I think last year or maybe the year before last. And you very humbly started off by saying that you hoped that everyone in the room wasn't too disappointed, because they clearly asked about 10 people before you, and all those 10 people had said no, and that's why we'd had you speak to us. And I think you followed it up with a very, very passionate explanation of what your governing philosophy was, and you've repeated a lot of that today. I mean, in many ways, this is sort of the dream portfolio for you, isn't it, really? Because you do, as you said, have a very long personal and professional interest in having gone through an apprenticeship, having gone to FE college, having understood what a kind of an employer-led degree is. You are now trying to roll out for the country what you did yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that event, and I think it may have been Gavin that had to be pulled off somewhere else, actually. They'd obviously asked a few people, and then I think I got the call about 5 minutes before, so that's why I said that. But it is very easy for me to speak about it, as you say, and I am very passionate about it because it's been my journey. And starting out in Knowsley and going to a comprehensive school, which is not known to have the best education system in the country. It's getting better, but it certainly was definitely not known to be the best when I was there. There's many people who have the same kind of challenges that me and my schoolmates faced, and too many of them still do. Now the schools have got better. There's a lot more children going to good and outstanding schools, and obviously that whole offer has improved. But still, working your way from sitting in that comprehensive school in some part of the country and understanding how you can get on in life, how you can get your break, how you can get your opportunity, and what that's going to look like is still a massive challenge for a lot of young people. And I know many young people are still in that situation, and I can still put myself in those shoes overnight. I mean, it doesn't take a minute. I can still imagine all of that uncertainty. And when I started my apprenticeship, I didn't know what it was. It could have been a lousy apprenticeship. That's why I'm very tough actually on the quality of apprenticeships, because you let young people down. They put all of their hopes and dreams in that opportunity, and it's up to us, up to the system to make sure that they deliver on that, up to the employer to make sure that you deliver on that. Too many apprentices in the early stages were let down by some low quality providers and some low quality employers. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that the quality of apprenticeships is very high. But the prestige of apprenticeships, I've always found it surprising when people say, we need to, increase the prestige, etc. Because in my experience, doing a degree level apprenticeship was almost the best thing you could do. And I still can't understand why everyone doesn't get it. You definitely study the right thing, because they'll only pay for you to study something that's valuable. You study and learn at the same time. You're applying it all the time. That's really valuable, particularly in a highly technical environment, a fast moving environment. Somebody pays you to do it, and they pay for your degree. I mean, what's not to like it? To me, these kind of higher level apprenticeships have always been a great social mobility tool. And I just really would, like many more people, to have that opportunity because I am passionate about it. But also on the side of the business, I think it's a really good way to bring talent on and to bring young people into businesses and to grow that talent as well. So it's really a win-win.
It is, but it's also interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, you'll almost certainly tell me you disagree with this, but it's not traditionally been the Tory party's forte to talk about technical education and talk about skills and talk about apprenticeships, hasn't it? I mean, you're relatively unusual amongst Tory MPs. Obviously, Gavin Williamson went to a sixth form college, went to university, but again, he's got a real passion about this. I mean, but you're still in the minority within the parliamentary party, which is still more dominated by the kind of the traditional GCSEs, A levels, onto more traditional higher tariff university route. Do you think that's changing? Do you think the Tory party itself as an institution is getting the kind of messages that you and the Secretary of State are pushing out?
I definitely do. I think first of all, there's apprenticeships is now seen as you know, quite a good way to get into good quality jobs. So I know a lot of my fellow MPs, their children are doing apprenticeships now, and they're doing, you know, apprenticeships that will take them, you know, as far as they want to go. I think the other massive difference that's changed a lot in the party is the red wall becoming the blue wall. A lot of my new colleagues have very similar backgrounds to me. They come from very similar areas. Some of them may have done A levels in university, but a lot of them did apprenticeships, whether it was electrical engineering apprenticeships or mechanical or nursing apprenticeships. So they've all, there's a lot more people who are from a very similar backgrounds to myself, you know, working class backgrounds who've used apprenticeships and FE colleges to get their way, to, you know, to get their way in life, to get their opportunities, and have done well, not just by becoming a Conservative MP, but actually all the things they've done before as well. So I think, I mean, it's, for me, it's you know, I voted Conservative from the age of 19. Coming from Knowsley, that says something. You know, it's a very
That definitely puts you in the minority.
It definitely puts me in a minority, but it actually was that whole experience of actually entering the workplace, working in a business, understanding how important business is, seeing the union's behaviour, and all of that coming together, which led me actually to the Conservative Party. And I think there are a lot of people who, you know, once they start working and once you get into understanding how important it is to support businesses, the private sector, how important it is to get the right skills, and how important it is to make yourself valuable to those places if you want to get on in life. Those lessons are very, you know, they lead you to the Conservative Party, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm just reflecting. I mean, my grandparents come from technically the other side of the Wirral, so they're in Birkenhead. But you know, they had a small newsagent. Obviously, neither of them went to university. My parents grew up on the Wirral as well, and just understanding that. My mum's the person, her family to go to university. But you're right, that concept of kind of getting a working start, having that link between, well, very, very small businesses in my grandparents' case, and sort of moving that through. I think you're right. There's something, isn't there, about the, I don't know if you call it the dignity of work, but an element of kind of work and based and training. And I think you're right that for that to shift into Westminster, there's definitely the blue wall, red wall element of that, I think, is key, because that hasn't been the discourse in Westminster for a number of years.
Yeah, but I think you've got another thing as well, which is, you know, this kind of drive to push everybody to, or lots more people to university, which has been great for opportunity on one level, but at another level we do have, it's something like 20 to 25% of graduates in non-graduate jobs. And I think that is something as well that people are starting, you know, people, the general public are starting to notice. You know, you go to university, obviously there's a lot of investment involved in terms of your student loan. You know, the expectation is that you'll be able to get a good job as a result of that. It's why you put the time and the effort into studying, and of course take on you know, a student loan. And if you then find out at the end of that journey that actually you don't have skills that people want to employ you in, that must be, you know, even worse, even more devastating. And I think there's now a number of people who've realized that, and, you know, they basically think, is there a way to make that choice less risky? Because it's a big investment decision you're making at 18. You know, it's a 30 to 40,000 pound decision you're making, investment decision in yourself, what to study, where to study, what's going to be valuable, which careers are on offer, are there skills shortages in those careers, Will I be able to get into them? How do I get there? You know, and it becomes, it's a very difficult set of choices, which is why, again, I think if you can start to make yourself more valuable through a T-level route or an apprenticeship route, learn more about the different careers, because they don't just lead to one career, they lead to a whole host of careers, many more than any careers teacher will ever tell you. So I think that's the, you know, the other element of it, which is, you know, that size of that investment decision. And if it goes wrong, then it must be pretty devastating. And in fact, we speak to a lot of people, I speak to a lot of apprentices who've done degrees and are now doing a level 4 or level 5 apprenticeship to gain skills that are valuable to the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount here, and we'll no doubt unpack some of it in the rest of the call. But I'm interested, you mentioned investment a lot of times, and it's always the best part of being a minister is that you get to spend some money, and you've talked about some of the investment that's already come on stream. We've got the CSR coming up, we've got the FE white paper coming up, huge number of people on this call, huge number of people in the sector, very, very keenly anticipating that. What do you know, you're not going to tell us what's in it, but what do you think are the types of things which the white paper and the CSR will set out in terms of further investment to make that work? Because you will know, and people on this call will know, that at the moment it's not an even financial journey. The choices you make as a young person at 16 or 18 to go down the university route or the technical route, it's not an evenly financed decision. And as you say, when you're making a big investment decision, you know, one route is pretty well supported by the state, one route is not supported so much. Is that parity of finance, is that something, and I'm deliberately not using the phrase parity of esteem, is that parity of finance something which you'd like to see being addressed?
Yeah, I think, you know, the broad themes are opportunity, flexibility, and equality in terms of access and you know, financial support. I mean, you know, the Prime Minister set out in his speech earlier on today, you know, this combination of, for those that don't have a level 3, having access to level 3 in areas that are valuable. So they, you know, that those areas that there are shortages, we need lots more people, and which are vast, by the way. There's so many areas that have massive skills shortages. So that's the first part of it, but also the level 4, level 5, enabling those routes, enabling the system to work much better at those levels as well, and to go, you know, to go all the way. And I think, you know, if I think back to some of the, you know, the best systems that have existed, and, you know, my own apprenticeship, it didn't start as a degree level apprenticeship. It was, you know, you did, I think it was probably a level 2 or 3, somewhere between probably, with a BTEC or ONC as they were called then, HNC degree. And, you know, you just went up the levels, and many people stopped at one level. You know, either they'd got the job that they really enjoyed, or you know, their family situation had changed and they didn't have as much time, and they would come back and do that later. Having the ability to do that flexibility to fit in with your life, but to be able to have that lifetime skills guarantee, you can go back and get the next level. You know, these progression routes are very clear to you. I think that's the job that we have to do, and that's what we're very much focused on, and that's what we are going to try and deliver in the sort of skills white paper and in the spending review. Of course, the spending review, it's a very difficult time to do a spending review because I mean, I haven't totted up exactly how much we spent on coronavirus, but it is an amount, hundreds and hundreds of billions. You know, in everything from building new hospitals, investing in, you know, everything to support health and testing, and then obviously furlough scheme, businesses, I mean, all over the place. The right thing to do, but of course it makes spending review more difficult. So, but I'm very cheered by the fact that, you know, the Secretary of State obviously has laid out his vision very clearly. You know, he's been a huge advocate for this area for a long time, and that's because also where he grew up, you know, he's similar to me. You know, he's a working class boy who, you know, he did get his way to university via an FE college, but you know, he will have gone to a school, a very similar school, where you'll have seen people who didn't get those opportunities as well, and he probably still sees them now when he pops back to Scarborough to see his mum. So I think, you know, I think that definitely is something that's a shared background, and it really you know what you're solving for. And quite often, you know, in the sort of Whitehall kind of world, people are leveled, or you'll have noticed this yourself, level zeros, level ones, level twos, level threes, and I'm trying to retrofit where my level is, but, you know, that's just not how it is. You know, your grandparents were level zeros.
Mm.
Yeah, but they never felt like level zeros, and they were much, you know, they were very smart, and they got on because they had the rungs and the opportunities to get on. And I think we just need to make sure that we even that balance, and we make sure that technical education is used as a route to get a lot more people on. It's a highly technical world we're living in.
Yeah,
And
no, well, I think my grandparents and my mother would be the first people to say that I don't do a proper job, and that they work much harder. They work much harder than I do, even though I've got all these fancy paper qualifications that don't actually let me do anything remotely transferable. Just one last question for me before I hand over to Julia. You touched on COVID, and obviously there's large numbers of people in this country who are sadly losing their jobs or on furlough and may well be about to lose their job, and who knows, but it's very, very possible that over the next few months, as various things change, a lot of people will lose their jobs. Now, some of them will go on and get new jobs quickly, and new industries are going to emerge. And, you know, we have a dynamic labour market, and we shouldn't forget that. But there are going to be a very large number of people who are going to need some formal assistance and some formal retraining. What's your hope and expectation that government will be able to support in terms of potentially very, very large scale retraining efforts?
Well, so we've announced a couple of things already, obviously with the plan for jobs, which was largely focused on youth and youth unemployment. You know, that's always the very first part that starts to suffer, actually, because the opportunities don't open up for young people. People tend to sort of cling onto their jobs. The labour market becomes a little stochastic, and you know, there's no opportunities being developed. So a lot of those initiatives around Kickstart, the apprenticeships incentives, traineeships, etc., and bringing back people from furlough, we're all, you know, focused, you know, designed to help young people. Obviously, the bringing back people from furlough and the apprenticeship incentive that was also there for people of any age as well, plus sector-based work academies for those people in the workplace who wanted to shift across. So there's been that kind of support that's been there. I think, you know, and also we've got the skills toolkit, which is, you know, I think was a very quick, very good reaction to. It started out, you know, to try and give people something interesting and useful to do during furlough. But I think as we've expanded it, because it's got a lot more usefulness than that. And that they're courses that are freely made available from employers, and we've kind of curated them and put them in an easy to find place. But they are all skills that are very valuable to employers. So I think that's something else as well. But in addition to that, it's now about how we really enable a much broader, more ambitious retraining, upskilling opportunity, and that's both through apprenticeships and through full-time study, or modular study or part-time study. We've talked about boot camps, which starting with digital will extend to other areas as well. And we're really looking, and obviously coronavirus, in terms of, you know, shifting all the learning online, that's also been some accelerated trend, which has got us into a space where there's much more opportunity to have blended learning as well. So all of those things are what we'll be focusing on, and really, I think it'll be a massive paradigm shift in terms of the opportunity for adults to get their second and third career. You know, I'm an MP as my second career, you know, and I think you know, most people have 2 and 3 careers in our lifetime, and this is a great opportunity. And I've met a number of people who were made redundant in the last recession, who used apprenticeships since to become fully qualified nurses, paramedics. I'm mental health nurse. I met one of those the other day, and they'd basically use that time to invest in themselves and say, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I always wanted to do this, but I just, you know, life happened. So we'll be there. So when you're ready, to make sure that you can get your life back on track, you can train for something that's valuable, you can fulfill the dream career you always sort of had in your mind at school, or you've been inspired to try since. And, you know, and we're there to help you every step along that journey.
Great. Julia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and good afternoon, Minister. I need to ask you about T-levels, obviously something very close to your heart. The first institutions are now delivering them, and you marked the day of the first students starting their T-levels. But there are still concerns about securing placements for those learners, and those concerns aren't going to go away the more the economy gets hit by COVID and the harder it gets for employers to offer any placements at all. Do you still feel that you're right to push ahead with T-levels this year and not delay them by a year?
100%, you know, even more so, all the stuff that we've just talked about, coronavirus has accelerated a trend that was already there. So I'm absolutely delighted that we started them. You know, the student numbers are good. I've been out now to a number of them. And you know what, it's so exciting. First of all, you step into some of these facilities and it's like you're stepping into the 21st century workplace. The equipment they have, you know, the layout they have, it's quite incredible. And the pupils are so excited, the students are so excited that, you know, they really are, you know, in a different space when it comes to the equipment they get to learn on, etc. They're also learning skills very quickly. So last week I was actually in Chichester, which is my own local college, and already the construction engineers were mapping out quite complex fine measurements using geosystems, the most advanced geosystem technology, about 35 grand a shot for one of these. And they were using this, and I said, you know, how long they've only started a week and a half ago. They had literally picked it up so quickly. And actually the teachers said, you know, I think they've been so desperate to get back to college that everybody's sort of supercharged and they're really learning really, really quickly. Now, the next challenge, obviously, all of this is a challenge, but, you know, we're all here. The only reason we exist is to do difficult challenges. If it was all easy, we wouldn't need to be here. But, you know, this next bit is to get the workplace assignments. Now, in many of the colleges I've been to already, a lot of them have actually been secured already. You know, it is a small number, about 1,300 or so. So it is a small number. And, you know, yes, of course, it's more challenging because there is more uncertainty. But I think businesses know that this is a very different kind of economic impact than a normal recession. It's almost like it's been a handbrake on our economy. And as soon as we can get back going again, the skills pipelines that they were, you know, 6 months ago talking to me about every day about how we're going to fill them, they'll still be there. So I think they're more strategic than that. And I'm very confident that employers are fully behind T-levels. Now, of course, this is, you know, the first time that people are doing this, and they're doing it in you know, very testing circumstances. But I spoke to a group of employers the other day, and, you know, the logical thing that next normally comes out of people's mouth is, you know, should we do virtual experiences instead of actual work placements? And I said to these employers, I still remember age 16 walking into that factory as though it was yesterday. I remember the smell, I remember the people, the environment, all the people I met, the network, the careers. You can't replicate a lot of that. It's a 9-week work placement. It's an extremely valuable part of the course. And I am certainly not giving up on that part of the T-level experience for young people. And of course, we've invested £115 million in the capacity building fund, which has built a lot of capacity, something like 20,000 places. So, you know, 20,000 they've built the capacity for, 1,300 we need. Coronavirus has had an impact, but most employers know that skills are still going to be their biggest challenge. And this is a great time, great opportunity for them to get the talent pipeline going.
So this morning, former HE Minister Joe Johnson said that he thought that the snobbery against FE actually no longer exists. The word that he used was that was an artifact. He said that actually he feels there's now an aggression towards HE. Is that something that you agree with?
I've never had any snobbery before for FE. I mean, you know, if you got an apprenticeship where I grew up, you had the golden ticket. You know, that was the golden ticket. You know, most people didn't get those opportunities. So I have never had any snobbery, and, you know, I've always known they were the secret weapon for many businesses as well. I guess. you know, from Joe's viewpoint, obviously he did have a different background, so you know maybe he's now got with the program. But you know, for me, I knew this is in my DNA. This is in my DNA. You know, I know that. I also know that pretty much every kid I sat next to in that Nosey Comprehensive School, if every single one of them could have had an apprenticeship, they'd have just had much better outcomes.
Thank you very much, Minister. Jonathan, I think you've got some questions from the
I
audience.
do. I have some questions from the virtual floor. So we'll now have to imagine that people are sticking up their hands and there's a microphone going around, and I have to make the awkward thing about a question, not a comment. The beauty of people having to write them down is that I can now take out all the bits of the commentary and just phrase on the questions. So I'll just read out some of these if that's okay. So the first one we've got is from John Cope of UCAS. And oops, somebody else is just literally typing a comment. Maybe move. John Cope says, does the minister expect T-levels to replace level 3 qualifications such as applied generals and BTECs, such that the vast majority of young people who go down a technical route will do a T-level at 16 rather than other qualifications?
I think T-levels will be a big part of our future in terms of technical education, but there is going to be a consultation to go through all of the vocational qualifications that we have at the moment at level 3. I was quite surprised actually. I mean, I did a BTEC myself. I was quite surprised to see how many qualifications there are now at level 3. And certainly when you're trying to navigate the system and choose your careers and plot your path, we need to do a much better job of making that a clear path. I think the key thing for the future is going to be embedding the employer-led elements into our technical qualifications and education. And that will be something that we'll just continue to expand because it's the right way to do it and it's the right thing to do. So the consultation will be looking to see, you know, how we fit qualifications alongside T-levels and how we make sure that we have, you know, this employer-led element as part of how we approach technical education. The quality, and that quality in the eye of the beholder being the individual learner and the business is what I'm most focused on. So I don't know what the outcome will be of the consultation, but obviously everybody will be eager to take part in that. But T-levels will be a big part of our future for sure. They are fantastic. If you haven't taken the time to look at the syllabus, go to one of the virtual open days. I went in as a student a number of times. I was blown away, and I know what I'm solving for because I've been involved in technology a lot in business. I was blown away at how good they are.
Great, thank you very much. Next question we have is from Michelle Smythe of the Open University, who has very much not obeyed the rules to write a question, not a comment. So let me summarise. She says, will the lifelong learning loan entitlement announced last week be available for all working age adults, many already in the workforce? And will it be able to support graduates as well as non-graduates to upskill and restart? For instance, a graduate in Stoke-on-Trent who now aged 35 wants to retrain from their current job to be a teacher or a nurse.
Okay, so there's two elements of it. One is for those that haven't done level 3 already, which is the you know, the ability to go back and do level 3 in those vast areas, but those higher value areas. And that's for people who don't have level 3 already. So if you're a graduate, then you wouldn't qualify for that. But the other part, which is the ability to retrain and upskill in the higher levels 4 and 5, then that's available to everybody, and not even just working age. If you decide, you know, because working age now can go, you know, quite a long time above, you know, the official retirement age, and that may even move in my lifetime. So yeah, to make sure that there's no age limit. If you're over 24 and you want access to that, the dream is to make sure that that system will support for 4 and 5 anybody wanting to upskill or reskill. But for the level 3, it is for those that don't already have a level 3 for free.
Okay. Next question we have is from Margaret Ambrose from Young Enterprise, who says it's more important than ever that young people start thinking about their future careers as early on as possible. How can we make sure that schools are incentivized and have time to focus on careers education at primary and at secondary school?
It's a vital question because, of course, one of the things that many people say, and particularly about apprenticeships, people kind of say, well, gosh, they are the best kept secret. And guess what? They kept them secret from me at school. I didn't find out about them, or I didn't know, nobody really told me about them. So there's been quite a lot of work in this area. I mean, obviously there was the Baker Clause to try and make sure that there was this expectation that, young people would be given access to information about the various career options available to them. We've been investing as well with the Careers Enterprise Company in these careers hubs, which are where a group of schools basically share resources to make sure actually that they give young people the opportunity to interact with businesses. That can be businesses going into the schools, them going into businesses. I've done a few virtual business open days with lots of businesses who are really, really keen to help, because businesses know they've got skills pipeline gaps, and they're really keen to get people to want to come and work in their business, to be able to in their industry usually. So I think there's been a lot of work, but we definitely will be building on this, and it is a key pillar in the skills white paper, because people do need to be able to consider those options and to have much more informed choices, a set of choices, because as I said, going to university is a huge investment. It's probably one of the biggest investments you'll make, investment decisions you'll make, other than buying your house or flat. So you have to get that right, and you also have to know all the alternatives.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Andrew Croydon of the ABPI. Apprenticeships have been identified as being available in a number of in-demand occupations, but for some of the new standards, there is no choice of provider. Is there a need to stimulate the market more to have greater choice for employers, so that it's not just a choice of one apprenticeship, but multiple different apprenticeships for some of these in-demand skills?
Yeah, and the market, there's quite a lot of training providers. I mean, more than 1,000. There are quite a lot. So the market's actually quite a big market. I think there's less than 200 FE colleges and more than 1,000 training providers. But there are some of the new standards where the market's is not yet quite evolved in terms of being able to offer the training, and we are looking at that. We're looking at I looked at one the other day. It was a modular building, I think it was. And, of course, when we talk about all the investments we're making in building and, the investments we're making in making sure that we reach our net carbon zero target by 2050, then you would think that modular building is going to be part of that equation. So we have an apprenticeship standard, but as yet, it's not yet, been picked up by providers, and actually businesses are looking to get some people to work with them on that. I think the market, you would think that they would, see the opportunity and develop the skills, as at least a couple of the 1,000 plus would do that. So I think it's probably just a matter of timing.
The next question comes from Hopi Sen, and Hopi says, the PM's recent speech about using changes to the loan system to give students greater choice about how and when they study post-18. To prepare for this, should universities, employers and FE colleges be thinking about working together even more to provide an integrated route for students' educational opportunities?
I think yes is the answer to that anyway. If I think about even my own journey, a HNC or a HND, gave you credit towards your degree, which you topped up. I can't remember how much time it was. In my case, I did 3 years instead of 4 because I did a HNC. But there was always this kind of clear routes in those days. That was actually the old polytechnics, because that's what I attended. Or I started, it ended up being a university, I think, by the time I finished. But those working together, and IoTs were a brilliant collaboration as well, which we're just going to be looking at wave 2 of those in the parts of the country that don't have them. But they are also, I think, a great way for universities, FE colleges and businesses to collaborate in a local area to make sure that they optimize the opportunities for young people in really valuable local careers.
Okay, Next question comes from Dean Machin at University of Portsmouth. I think this might be a critique of me as a questioner rather than a critique of you as a minister, so maybe I won't ask this question. No, he says, if the plan is to end the bogus distinction between FE and HE, should it be called an FE only white paper? Should it not be a white paper more about tertiary education? Now, it's perfectly possible that I've just used skills white paper as shorthand, but is the idea that this white paper will include a sort of full service tertiary offer?
The skills white paper is focused on what we need to do to strengthen up our offer in terms of technical education, but there will also be, I think, more information in terms of HE and how HE, work more with the sector. And, obviously there's a lot of universities that are really focused, starting to focus on higher technical qualifications as well. So there will be, I'm sure, those discussions and that kind of focus as well.
Okay, great. We've just got time for a couple more, and then I'll hand back to Julia for a quick last minute, and then any last reflections from you. So Tim Smith from White Hat says, does the government think the apprenticeship employer incentives are working, and what would success look like for you in terms of those incentives?
It's a bit early to tell because they've only just been, sort of, I think it was September the 1st when we launched it, backdated to August. But yeah, I mean, from what I hear, I mean, I've been round to, some skills fairs and some apprenticeship fairs, talking to employers. They are very interested in that. It gives more money, makes it sort of a bit easier to make the decision. One of the difficulties, I think, with the system has been that a lot of the volume for some of the apprenticeships came from those sectors that have been the hardest hit in terms of coronavirus in the past. So that's been hospitality and retail. I don't expect that there'll be a lot of, in many of those areas, they'll be constrained because, they're making people redundant. They're dealing with restraints, which mean they don't have the same capacity or the same capability to be able to sell or offer their services. But I think it's generated a lot of interest, and I do hope that people will make that. It makes it easier to make that decision in the short term. I think the other thing is that there's another. Obviously, you've got Kickstart as well. So it could be that some young people start on Kickstart and then continue on an apprenticeship later. I think that would be another natural route for many of the Kickstart opportunities as well.
That's great. And then last question I think we've got time for, I'm afraid, is from Patrick Christie of London South Bank University. He says, have the DfE considered extending the availability of maintenance loans as opposed to just tuition loans? So you don't qualify for a maintenance loan if you study an HNC part-time. This can potentially exclude mature learners who want to reskill but can't afford to give up work, reduce their hours. So it's not just about tuition loans, but it's also about maintenance loans as well.
I think we've gone a different route, which is more around the discretionary sort of bursary funding, which will accompany the higher technical qualifications. So that's been the approach that we've taken, which is basically to give a pot of money to the institution to be able to, to individualise that offer, which is probably, I think, the way that we will continue to go.
All right, very good. Julia, back over to you.
Well, it feels like a busy few months coming up, doesn't it? Certainly not shortage of policy and announcements to come our way. And I guess we'll be looking out for that, but also for how COVID continues to impact both how the sector can operate and what it will be needed for in terms of providing for the economy and for society. And how students make sure that they're not left behind with digital poverty and access to education. And data today showing that 94 colleges are currently fully open, but I guess that number will go up and down as areas get hit by outbreaks. So it feels like education journalists will be busy, as will you, Minister.
Well, I mean, that's certainly true. But I've got to say the FE sector has done an amazing job actually in response to coronavirus. I can't say this enough. I'm actually genuinely blown away. I'm very proud, actually, to represent this part of the education system, because they really have just stepped up to the plate, really to push everything online, to make sure everybody had a device. They were using their loan PCs. They were, being very flexible in how they supported young people. Going to the colleges I've been to and going around, the offer, the way they've got ready to reopen, how they're managing the reopening, it's really been standout. And I have a great deal of confidence and faith in the sector that, once it gets all the attention and the focus that's coming, be careful what you wish for. But, I have a great deal of faith and, a lot of confidence that the sector will exceed the expectations that everybody has of the sector. Because I see that pretty much in everything I do day to day. They always pull it out the bag.
Do you think, just following up on that, do you think that colleges are, and indeed independent training providers, are able to handle the shift to digital? Because, I mean, who knows how long we'll be living in this type of half on, half off system, but it's perfectly possible that, we may see a semi-permanent shift to digital amongst some employers, amongst some colleges. There's obviously a specific issue going on at the moment to do with apprenticeships who can't necessarily fulfill their functional skills qualifications online. But do you think that the system is ready? And we've seen this in the school system as well. Some schools have responded magnificently and some schools have slightly struggled more to make the shift online. Do you think the FE sector is ready to do this, what could be a semi-permanent shift to digital delivery in some respects?
I think they did really well with no notice. And I think there's an opportunity now for us to build on those that really were standout and spread that best practice. And we've basically been working with GIS, the Education Training Foundation, we've repurposed some of that focus to make sure that we really build on that opportunity. They did have already the technology, most of them had the technology in place. They were using a lot of the technology for assignments and stuff like that. I think assessments and exams are always the bit that get more tricky, aren't they? Because, certainly with a lot of the deeply technical assessments that are in this sort of vocational and technical qualification space, they have been a bit more difficult as well. But yes, I do. And I think, I've spoken to so many colleges. I've been on virtual visits pretty much every week, and now I've been on a few live visits as well, which has been fantastic. And when you speak at the virtual visits, I mean, by and large, all the teachers will say, if you'd have told me that I would be doing this, I wouldn't have believed it. And, I've been in classrooms where they've taken us inside cages. They've had us, doing all kinds of sort of crazy things interactive on screen. And, most of us said, if you'd told me a few months ago I'd be doing this, I wouldn't have believed it. But, they've actually really crossed, a chasm really in terms of having to do it. And I think the opportunity as a result of that, deep dive, which might have felt uncomfortable for some, but they've really done a brilliant job of pulling it off. I think it gives them opportunities, and many colleges are now thinking about, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean for how we can really spread the word of FE colleges?
Very good. And just a final question. Politicians are always thinking about what their places in the history books might be. If you were to think back and think that, if we were writing the history of further education and skills policy in England, and some historian was writing about the reforms of 2020 and what Gillian Keegan did and marked out the skills white paper, and he or she as this historian, maybe they failed to get an apprenticeship, so they've had to go to Oxford and study history as a second option. What are the things which you want that putative historian to say that you've done, that this white paper has done? What are the things you want to be seen of as your legacy in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time?
Well, I think the first thing to say is it won't be my legacy, it'll be the Secretary of State's legacy for sure. And he's been here.
You have to say that, we understand.
Yeah, but he's been here a lot longer than I have. He's been banging on about this for a lot longer than I have. But I think it probably just as you said, that the person in Oxford feels disappointed because they didn't get onto the right apprenticeship.
Very good. Well,
that option, everybody to have that option. I think even the people in Oxford, if they ever want to go that route. But I think that's really it. When that option is a viable option in a career that you're interested in your local area, and you know all the routes to get you to where you want to go in life. And everybody says, you know, before that it was complex, it was messy, it wasn't available, we all thought we needed to go to university to get anywhere in life, and then this route opened up and it changed my life. The same way I talk about my apprenticeship changed my life. Everybody has that life-changing opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, on that genuinely affirming note, thank you so much, Minister. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer all the questions in the Q&A, but we will be picking this up, and we'll be doing some work with TES following this up. And as Julia said, it's going to be a busy agenda for the next couple of months, so we look forward to continuing it. But thank you once again, and we'll have to give you a virtual round of applause, I'm afraid. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.